Hey folks, Eric Scheidel here, the HVAC Service Mentor. Welcome back to the channel, and thanks for watching. Today I want to talk to you about a topic that is kind of poignant right now as I record this in February of 2021. Our nation, of course, is in the grip of cold stretch with cold stretching all the way down to the borders with Mexico and unprecedented extreme winter weather conditions, which has people like us in the HVAC community out working a lot of overtime right now. And so I thought it would be helpful to address those of you who might be somewhat new to the industry and who may be experiencing on-call service for the first time, or maybe you're about to find yourself in the on-call rotation. So today I'd like to talk to you about how to survive being on call, or maybe it should be called how to make the best of being on call. Now, as an HVAC service technician, I've been on call. In fact, for the last 24 years, I think I've probably been on call for at least 20 of those years. And at one point, I was the only technician on call for an entire winter season. So I definitely know what it's like to be on call. And on call is part of the nature of the job. I know a lot of folks who just don't want to go into the service department simply because they don't want to be on call. But I got to tell you, if that's what's holding you back, you're missing out on a lot of really great things about being a service technician. So you're just going to have to be on call. So stick with me, and I'm going to give you some valuable, helpful tips that I have accumulated over the years that can help you survive your on-call rotation and even make the best of it. So the first thing that I'd like to mention is that you need to know when you're on call. Know your on-call schedule in advance and plan for it accordingly. Most of the companies that I have worked for have their on-call schedules set and their on-call rotation on the calendar at least 6 months in advance, if not an entire year in advance. So you have adequate time to put this on your own personal calendar, inform your family, and make sure that you know when you're on call. It's no fun for anybody, especially you, if you wake up one morning or you get done at the end of a day and you're like, oh, by the way, you're on call this weekend. You're like, what? I was not prepared for that. If you're prepared, it makes it a whole lot easier. Now, every once in a while, you're going to have a conflict sometimes, right? Your on-call schedule gets made and you find out, boom, that you're supposed to be on call right in the middle of an important family event, for example, that you can't miss, right? Someone's getting married, or you're flying to Hawaii and your vacation is booked, something like that, right? You're going to have to swap on call with somebody else. Now, the sooner you do that, the better. It isn't the dispatcher's job to figure this out. It's your job to figure this out. So make sure that you do, and make sure that you do it in advance. The last thing anybody wants is to be scrambling around trying to find somebody to cover on call because you didn't realize you were supposed to be on call and you had some other commitments. So make sure that you plan in advance. The second thing that I encourage you to do is to be prepared. Make sure that your van is stocked with parts, commonly used parts, especially at the end of the week. A lot of on-call rotations start on the Friday. They go through the weekend and then the following week through the next Thursday. When you're out there by yourself, your support network is a lot smaller. Supply houses may be closed. So don't be the guy who has to go run for every single part. Make sure you have something in your van to service your customers. Make sure you've got gas in the tank. Some gas cards don't work on Sundays, or they don't work after a certain hour of the evening. So make sure you fill up with gas at the toward the end of your Friday so that you are full up for the weekend. And notice where your gas tank is at on Saturday. So in case your gas card shuts off on Sunday, you'll be gassed up for all those Sunday calls that might come in. Make sure you've got clean uniforms with you. The last thing you want to do is throw all your uniforms in the laundry on Saturday morning and then immediately get a call that you have to go somewhere. You definitely need to be dressed as a professional, even when you're on call. It's just like a regular work day. And paperwork. If you're still using paper invoices, make sure you have plenty of them. Don't be down to your last 2 invoices on Friday evening. Make sure you have plenty of those. And don't forget, if you sell service agreements, make sure you have plenty of those as well. Being on call is a great time to sell new service memberships to new customers who may be calling you for the first time. Plan to work late every day. Every day that you're on call, whether it be a weekend day or a weekday, just plan to be working late. Don't tell anybody that you're going to be home at a specific time. Let your families know that, hey, I'm on call. I am going to be working late. What very frequently happens is the last call that comes in of the day, say dispatcher's just, ready to turn off her computer or his computer and get ready to go home for the day. And that last call comes in. That's your call. If you are on call, it goes to the on-call technician, and that happens all the time, especially in extreme weather conditions. So you're going to be the one fielding those calls, those last calls of the day, and be prepared that your days are going to run long, and that's just the way it is. While you're thinking about it, pack a little extra food for lunch, because you're probably going to be eating dinner in your van on call. So best to have some extra snacks and extra fuel in your gas tank with you. Know who your backup is and know what is your company's policy about that. And by backup, I mean both technical support backup is much, much better if a company has someone who's designated to fill that role, such as a service manager or service supervisor, whom you can call up for technical help. I much prefer you do that rather than just calling your buddy or calling Joe Schmo or somebody else. That isn't necessarily their job, and that's not always necessarily the most productive way to do it. So know who your backup is. Also, it might get more busy than you can handle. You might get more calls coming in than you can physically run in a day or in an evening from one day to the next. You may have to call in for reinforcements. Most frequently, the policies that I've worked in is that the next on-call person is the backup to the person who's on call now. So keep that in mind when things are real busy, is that you might be someone's backup during the time that you are not on call. And so you do have to kind of be available on standby when things are super extreme as far as bad weather goes. Make sure that you know if the weather is going to be bad, that you communicate with that person and see if they're available, ready and willing to back you up if it becomes necessary. While you're on call, you want to keep a log. Have a notebook and carry it with you everywhere you go. Every call that you receive, whether you run it or not, make sure you record it in your logbook. And you want to be accountable for every call that comes in. And sometimes calls slip through the cracks. Sometimes the answering service doesn't send them to you like they're supposed to. And sometimes on Monday morning, the boss is getting angry calls from customers saying, hey, I've been waiting all weekend and you're supposed to be out here and nobody ever called me back. Well, the first person the boss is going to come to is going to be you, who was on call. Hey, how come you didn't call this customer back? And you can go flip through your logbook and, well, I didn't get a answering service, never gave it to me. I got this one, this one, this one, this one. Didn't get that one. That doesn't happen very often, but sometimes it does. And we need to be able to sort it out and keep it straight. And the more professional you are and the better you keep records of what's going on when you've been on call, the better things are going to be for you. We want to be very prompt in calling customers back. When we're on call, the main number that people normally call for service gets rerouted to a 24-hour answering service. The on-call schedule is given to that answering service, and when they receive a call, then they record that customer's name, address, basic information about what they're calling for. They send that information to the person who's on their list for being on call at this time. When you receive that information, that customer may have already been waiting on a good 10 or 15 minutes. Ideally, we want to have customers called back within no more than 30 minutes from when they call, which means for you, when you receive the information from dispatch, you want to try to call them back, call that customer back within 10 or 15 minutes. Whenever possible. I mean, sometimes you might be elbow deep in a furnace, or you may be on the phone with 2 other people previously. Sometimes that happens, but most of the time it doesn't. And you can get back to that customer quickly. And that's very important that you do. So make that as a goal. When you call that customer back, it's very important that you be professional and that you be very specific. So it's very good that you have something in mind about what you're going to say to this person beforehand. When you're on call, you're not just the technician, you're also the call taker and the dispatcher. You have to take on both of these roles, and you have to be just as thorough and just as professional as they are during the day when you're out running calls normally. You have to do their jobs. Um, it would pay for you to sit in the office once in a while, maybe for just a little bit, and listen to them talk to customers and do something very similar. So when you call for help, sometimes you get more calls than you can handle. Sometimes you spend your entire time just on the phone because there's so many calls coming in. All you'd have no time to actually do any work. All you're doing is talking to people. At those times, you have to make a call between, okay, and no longer am I doing everything. Now I need to switch and I need to call in some reinforcements. And how many do I need to call and what's going on? In If extreme weather is forecast for your time on call, you should be having a chat with your service manager beforehand to lay out a plan for what it's going to be like when this happens. Ultimately, your service manager should, or service supervisor should be the person you call when this stuff really goes crazy, so that that person can help out fielding calls, dispatching technicians, calling in reinforcements, and so on. Um, Up until that point, it's going to be your decision. When do I have to call for reinforcements? And it kind of depends. And this is my personal take on it. If it's the weekend, and if you have 4 calls standing by, another call comes in, you need to call your backup and ask them to help out. Give them the next one in line. And then when they're done, now you're going to kind of act as a dispatcher. So when they're done with that one, have them give you a call back and identify, okay, where are we at now? Do you want to give another call to that guy, or you take it? What you don't want to do is just give everything to your backup. Your job to be on call. They may help out with 1 or 2. It's your job to take the majority of them, but still make sure that all of your customers get serviced. If it's on a weekday, I would suggest that depending on how late it is and how much you can handle, when that 4th call comes in, then you take the 2 of them and give them to your backup, and then you take 2, so that the 2 of you can work together, and both of you hopefully get home before midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, so that you can still function the next day. Because don't forget, while you might be on call tonight, you got a whole day's worth of work before you tomorrow too, and you can't sacrifice tomorrow's work for today. Last thing I want to talk about is early morning line jumpers. And these folks are going to give you a call. They're going to call up for service the first thing in the morning when they wake up, and they're going to do it on purpose. They will probably have known that their furnace or air conditioning system or their heating system, whatever they have, has been down all weekend. And they are going to wait until the first thing in the morning, the crack of dawn, to call for service. And sometimes their thinking is that they want to get you out there first so that they can jump to the front of the line, so that they can get their heat back on, not have to pay overtime, and not have to miss any work. And that doesn't work that way. What they don't realize is that the next Monday or the next day's schedule is already set. There's already people waiting for service. There's already people who have called in, who have made an appointment, gotten on the schedule, and it is not fair to all those people for this person to just jump in front of the line. No, that doesn't work that way. So what I always used to do when folks would try to call in early in the morning is like, hey, I can't ignore my first call today to come service you. I just can't do that. Now, I have in some extreme cases where things are in danger of freezing, gone out to take a look, but I'm not going to stay there all day. I've got other customers who are waiting for me. So what I like to do is I'll go through the preliminaries, verify who they are, verify what their problem is, and I'll say, okay, great. I do have a full schedule today. Our whole company does. But what I'll do is I'll give your information to dispatch, and I'll ask them to give you a call when they show up, or when they come in the morning, with a arrival window. Don't let these people push you around. In some cases, whether it's the weekend or whether it's a weekday, you will find customers who don't want to pay overtime, who they've got fireplaces, they got electric heaters, whatever they have, or they just don't want service. They don't think it's that big of a deal. They want to wait until regular hours to have service. No problem. However, it's very important what you say to these people. You do not want to give them the impression that they are now first on the list for Monday morning. No, first on the list for Monday morning has already been occupied by someone who called in and set an appointment. Never, ever, ever tell anybody that we'll get out there first thing tomorrow, no matter what. Never, ever, ever say this. You are really going to annoy your dispatcher and your service manager if you're telling people this, because you just don't know what the schedule is. Only thing that you know is that you have a first call on Monday morning, and probably so does everybody else. So don't promise service the next day. In fact, be very clear that the only thing that this person can expect is a phone call from the dispatcher to schedule an appointment. That is it. It's the only thing that you can promise. So a couple final notes. You might want to consider a free call recorder app on your phone, because especially in situations like I just described, customers will say, hey, I was promised that I'd be first called Monday morning. And you can have a recording of that phone conversation that clearly says you didn't tell them that. It's never a bad idea to have backup and a recording of who said what and what expectations were given. Lastly, the next morning, it sounds tough, it sounds rough, and it can be, go into the office a little earlier than you normally do and square up the on-call list, your logbook, with your dispatcher, because the dispatcher is going to get a call log from the answering service. And together, the two of you want to go through the calls that came in, which ones that you actually received, and what their disposition is. Did you run them or did you not run them? Does the dispatcher need to call? If you ran them, are they complete or are they incomplete? Do we have to come back with parts or follow up in some way? Does it need to go to the sales department? Does it need to go to the manager? Or are they done, squared away, taken care of, nothing to worry about? And this meeting, depending on how many calls you have ran, may take 5 minutes, it may take 30 minutes. It is very important that you do that reconciliation with the dispatcher so that he or she knows what the heck went on. All right, folks, I hope this helps you guys deal with being on call and make the best of it. And the best advice that I can give you here is to just treat it as a normal part of your job, accept your on call as being part of your duty, and make sure that you get it done and have fun with it. Hey folks, this is Eric Scheidel, the HVAC Service Mentor. Thanks for watching. Hey, make sure you like the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We do all kinds of technical tips as well as practical tips like this one for being out there in the HVAC service industry. Don't forget to go to the website at www.hvacservicementor.com. We've got some pretty cool and interesting training opportunities there that you might find valuable. And while you're there, you'll have an opportunity to sign up on our email list. Every new sign up gets access to a free full-length training course, so make sure you go and check that out. And we never spam. We don't share your address with anybody. We just give you updates about training options that are going on as they come up.